Hello everyone and welcome. We are Nim with you once again for another tutorial. This time we're going to explore lighting and we're also going to set up a skybox for our level. So let's go ahead and jump right into that. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for a package called Sky Renders. If it doesn't show up here, you can always click on the folder and you can browse into your textures folder and you can look for the package called Sky Renders. This one right here. We're going to click open and we're going to get a bunch of different packages here of different types of skyboxes. And also different kinds of cloud patterns, different environments to choose from. We're just going to go ahead and pick the one at the top of the list, Arborea. This is a really simple, straightforward skybox. Nothing too fancy or technical. And we're going to use this as our skybox for our current first level. So what we're going to need to do to set up a skybox is we're going to first set up an actual room for our skybox. And the way we do that is we pretend like we're making any sort of regular room. We're going to drag our preview brush out here. And we are going to change the dimensions of this just a little bit. We're going to make it 512. Actually, no, let's just make it really big. 1024. 1024. So that it matches the resolution of the skybox texture. We don't want to have to like squish it or stretch it out. So we're just going to build it at 1024 square. And we're also going to just move this out of the way. We're going to set this up so that it is coplanar with the floor. I'll probably drag this out a little bit further away. Not because I have to, but because I want to. Because it might make texture alignment a little bit easier. And what I mean, but you'll see what I mean by that in a second. So now that we have our space here, let's go into our texture browser. Let's just click on the roof texture and let's see, we've built it. We'll close this. Let's go ahead and subtract our skybox room. Now you can see there's some weird things going on. Like the edges of textures are getting stretched, and they're not fully tiling across the space. They only appear once and they don't tile. So we're going to have to manually adjust all of these textures, and we're also going to have to place each texture that corresponds to the different cardinal directions of the skybox on each of these surfaces. So obviously the walls shouldn't have the roof texture. They should have their own texture, and we can kind of base the direction on, you know, our top view of our map, where we have north facing over here, south over here, east and west. So we can place our textures in that orientation. So if I go zoom out here to where I can look at our level and see it kind of representative of the top view, we can select this surface and we can select the north texture. And we can select the east texture for this side. So let's select east. And don't worry, we'll fix these in a minute. South. And west. And of course, we also need to attach or assign our floor texture. So that will be this. Now, we're going to have to go into the surface properties and adjust each one of these surfaces so that they display correctly. And to do that, we're just going to move this off to the side. We're going to right click on our sky surface and select surface properties. And now we're just going to go ahead and nudge these materials. Well, first of all, we're going to go to alignment and we're going to click on box. And I'm going to do this for all of the faces in our cube. And I'm going to hit align. And this is basically going to set up the vertex information for every single one of these materials to make it easier to get them all working on the same page and getting them to match up to each other. So now that we've got all of our materials aligned, we're going to go ahead and nudge this and nudge this. That's weird. We're seeing some issues. Let me try planar auto and see if that resolves it. Sometimes you just have to move the entire physical space of the skybox to get the sky panels to work. It's pretty finicky. I haven't figured out the magic to get it to work yet. Yeah, let's just do that. I'm going to go ahead and reset all on our cube over there, and I'm going to move our skybox over here to the corner. I'm also going to move it up out of the way so it is not in any way aligned to the dimensions of our room. I can't explain why it sometimes works better this way, but it does. Go ahead and recompile. And also you can see now our room is like fully dark. And that's because we don't have any light information in here. And the walls are still being treated like normal walls. And this is a skybox. We want this to actually function like a sky. So what we need to do is we need to click on every single one of these surfaces. And I'm moving my mouse around. You can see the little widget in the bottom left-hand corner spinning around. So we know I'm looking around, and I've checked to make sure that all of the surfaces are selected. And now I'm going to move out of the cube. And while I still have my material properties out, I'm going to select flags, and I'm going to click on fake backdrop and also unlit. And now these textures are going to show up regardless of what the situation is for our lighting. And now we're going to go ahead and readjust these textures. Let's go ahead and go to alignment. Let's do default align. Let's start with our texture over here. There we go. Now it's working. I can't explain why this is the case, but if you take your skybox and you move it outside of where your current level is and keep it separate from the axis of each dimension of your existing play space, for some reason the skybox just behaves better, and I can't explain why. Also, it looks like some of these materials are backwards, so I may have put the wrong facing materials on, and that's fine. We'll fix that in a minute. I just want to get these aligned first. Yeah, it looks like I got the east and west textures mixed up. And sometimes you just need to give them a little nudge. Okay, that's correct. This is correct. I think we need to move these tiles around. So this is actually going to be the south face. If I bring our material window back. Yeah, this is south because it matches up with the sky up here. And that means this should be west. No, I guess it's east. I guess the compass runs in reverse. Okay. Noted. So this will be west. I swear, it makes no sense to me either. And then this will obviously be our north face. There we go. Now, it doesn't exactly look like much at the moment, but if we were to move our camera... Ooh, there's an alignment issue there. Move this out of the way. Oh, now I can't see. There we go. Let's nudge this all the way over until it pops. There we go. All right. So, as I was saying, this doesn't look like much of a skybox. But if we move our camera so that it's right in the center of the room, and we can preview where our camera is in our window up here. Let's also turn on real-time previews for our windows. We can see, if we pan the camera around, everything now looks like it is panoramic and properly represented in all three dimensions. So we are going to leave it like this, and for this to be a proper skybox to actually show up in our level, the next thing we need to do is we need to add a SkyInfo object. So let's go to our actor browser, click on actor classes, let's click on info, zone info, and SkyZoneInfo. And we're going to right click on the floor of our skybox here and add SkyZoneInfo here. So I'm going to move this out of the way. Now in our SkyZoneInfo, we don't necessarily have any properties that we really need to change at the moment. It's pretty much good as is, but I want to make sure that it is centered as best as I can possibly get it in the middle of the skybox, because this is going to act as our proxy for our view of the sky when we are in the level. And it's basically a 360-degree omnidirectional camera that is creating an environment map that we can view from here. So if we look up, we'll be able to see sky. But we're not going to be able to see it just yet because we actually need to add a sky surface. Now I'm going to add a skylight to our roof, and you can either do that one of two ways. You can either right-click on this roof, and we can just make the entire roof sky by right-click on it, clicking Surface Properties, going to Flags, and clicking Fake Backdrop. But I actually want this to look like a proper skylight, and I want it to come in through multiple openings in the ceiling. So I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back to our preview brush, and I'm going to right click and change some of these properties. I'm going to make the height 128, and for the width I'm going to make it 256, and the breadth 128. I'm going to click build, and what that's going to give me is this little rectangle. I'm going to put that over here, and I'm going to drag it up to the ceiling. And you know what? It's kind of small. I think I'm actually going to double the size of this. Let's make this 512 and 256. There we go. I think that's better. So I'm going to put one right here and make sure it matches up with the tiles on my roof, which I think is fine. And I'm going to go to my texture browser and make sure that none of these sky textures are selected. So I'm going to go back into our humanoid architecture group, and I'm going to select borders. And I'm going to go ahead and select this this texture here, BDR02HA. So I'm going to select that and move this off to the side. Stop fighting me, Windows. And now we're going to go ahead and close this, and we're going to subtract. And now we have what is going to become our skylight. So I'm going to select all these walls here. And these are basically going to be the trim for our ceiling. So I'm going to come down here where I can see it. I'm going to bring up our surface properties. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to scroll this texture down. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and... No, let's go down a couple more. There we go. I'm going to leave it here. And then for this surface, I'm going to go back into my textures. I'm going to go to bases. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm just going to pick a texture that I know I'm not going to use anywhere else, that when I look at it, I'm just going to say, oh, that's a sky texture. So I'm going to go ahead and choose this fully black texture here and apply that. And then to make this an actual surface that we'll be able to see our sky through, I'm going to right click. Well, actually, I already have the surface properties loaded, so I can just click here. And for flags, I'm going to go ahead and set fake backdrop and unlit. And that's all I really need to do. If I reset my my cube, just so I can get it ready for later, and just move it out of the way. Move that down here. That's fine. Okay, so I'm going to select our skylight. I'm going to right click and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to move it over here. And now that I've done that, I'm going to compile the entire level. And you can see that we're still not seeing the sky yet, and that's because we're not going to see it until we actually preview the level. And I just realized this is off, so I'm going to nudge this over so that it matches up with the tile and recompile again. There we go. So yeah, we're not getting any light from our skylight, and that's because it's not really a light. But we will get to that in a minute. But right now, I just want to get everything set up so that we can actually see our sky. So we've compiled. We're going to go ahead and save. And now we're going to test our level. And you can see we now have Skybox outside. When we fly up here, we won't be able to escape the level because this is solid geometry, even though it's a fake backdrop. But what we are seeing is the perspective of the sky from the SkyInfo or the SkyZoneInfo object that we set up in our Skybox. That is transmitting what it sees to any surface that is marked with fake backdrop property. So we can see our sky outside. We're not getting any light from the sky though, and that's because we haven't actually set up our sunlight. So let's go ahead and do that next. So now we're going to start getting into lighting. And there's a few different light objects that you can use in UnrealEd 3.0 to light your levels for Unreal Tournament 2004. Now, we were able to light some of our dark spaces earlier by changing the properties of our zone info. And if we go into zone light, we set our ambient brightness to 20. And I'm just going to go ahead and set this to 0 again so that we can properly preview our lights as we're working. So now that's set to 0. Let's deselect this. Let's go ahead and create a sunlight, and we're going to go ahead and do it inside the skybox that we created, just because if we're only going to use one sunlight for our level, and when we're placing lights in our level and we have a whole bunch of objects and it might make it difficult to find, we're going to go ahead and just keep one sunlight in a place that we know we can always find it. And I typically like to just put it in the skybox for safekeeping, because I know if I ever need to adjust the sun, that's where I'm going to find it, and it won't be lost anywhere in the collection of assets that I've got for my level. So to get to our sunlight, we're going to need to go back into our actor browser. We're going to go to light, and we're going to click on sunlight. And then we're going to click on the floor of our skybox, and then we're going to add sunlight here. I'm going to move this out of the way. Now, by default, the sun is going to be facing to the left. And I'm going to come down here. And what I like to do is, if there is a sun in the scene, then what I like to do is take the sun object, take the sunlight, and I'll move it as close to where the image of the sun is. And I'll turn real-time preview on again. I like to move it to roughly about where the sun is in the skybox image, and try to get the angle of the sun to effectively point toward where my skybox or my SkyZoneInfo object is. So it looks like the sun is a little bit closer to the top, like right here maybe right here, down a little bit. This is why real-time preview is really important. Okay, I think right here is about accurate. So next, I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to try and approximate where the zone info is and try and get it just about at the same spot, and look around and make sure that like everything doesn't feel like a cube, like it feels like a proper environment. And then I'm going to point my camera at the sunlight. And now in my top view, my front view, and my side view, I'm going to start with the front view first. And I'm going to try and rotate the angle of the sun down by holding down Control and right mouse button. And I'm going to keep rotating it until I can see the middle line of the shaft of the arrow of the sunlight, if it disappears behind the little points of the arrow. And once I've done that, then I'm going to come over here to my top view and do the same thing. I'm going to Control right click and drag until I can get that little cross in the middle of the sunlight to be perfectly perpendicular and not bent. So I'll need to do some other adjustments in the front view. Tilt it up a little bit. There we go. That's about as accurate as I can make the sun direction to the actual sunlight in the skybox. So once that's been set, I don't need to worry about the sun still being here. I can move it wherever I want. And the direction of the light is always going to be, it's never going to change from, this angle of where the image of the sun is to where the zone info is, unless I move this zone info somewhere else. So as long as everything in here stays the same, you can still move this sun object wherever you want. Just don't rotate it. And then we're going to change some properties for the sunlight because we want it to feel like an actual sun. If we go down here to our level, we can kind of see that the sunlight is already illuminating some of these surfaces. So we can go into the light color and we can change the brightness to something like, 128. And now we can really see that sunlight starting to illuminate these faces. And we can also adjust the color. I want this to be more approximate to sunlight, so I'm probably going to go somewhere around 32. And to get some of that yellow sun color in, we're going to drop the saturation a little bit to like 224. There we go. I think that's looking good. And then to sort of simulate the ambient value of the sky, that's where we're going to start putting in some spotlights. And so to do that and make those spotlights work, we're going to start with a duplicate copy of our skylights that we made. So we're going to duplicate these. And we're going to stack them on top. And this is going to be the area where we're going to put our spotlights to create the ambient light of the sky. You might be asking, what does that mean? Well, if we compile our level, you can see that we're not getting any light from the sunlight because we've created these extra spaces up here. And in these spaces, we haven't actually, set up our sunlight to be able to filter in. Also, we want to change all of these surfaces to be fake backdrops so that we get more of the skybox in here. So we're going to select all of these, go back to our textures. We'll select the black texture. We're going to right click on a surface and we're going to select fake backdrop and unlit, just like our other sky surface. I'm going to close that and move our texture browser aside. Let's go ahead and recompile. And now you can kind of see we're getting skylight coming in from our skylights. They're hitting the top of the wall here, and they're hitting the floor down here, and they're also illuminating the area back here. But that sun direction isn't really filling the room, and that's what our spotlights are going to do. So let's go ahead and add in a spotlight by going back into our actor browser. And in the lights, we're going to select spotlight, and we're just going to right click on the floor and add spotlight here. Let's move this out of the way. So what we want our spotlight to do is effectively emulate what the color of the sky light is going to be filtering through the windows if it was coming straight down and at all angles. And the best way we can do that is to emulate that conal effect of the light is to use the spotlight. So right now we can see our spotlight is pointing off to the right. And, you know, the game just does this by default. Every time you put in an entity, it's always going to point to the right the first time it comes into the map. We're going to, in our front view, make this light point straight down by holding down Control and right click. And we're going to drag to the right until that arrow is pointing straight down. Doesn't have to be perfect, but I am a perfectionist. So now that it's pointing down, we're going to move it up into our ceiling space. We're going to move it all the way up to the top, but not outside. We want to basically keep the end of this red shaft of the arrow inside the map so that we know that the light is going to stay in here. And now that we're zoomed in on it, I can fine-tune that angle even more until it's almost perfectly straight down. And same, I can align these little crosses of the arrows so I know that it's perfectly centered in that skylight. So another thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set the radius view for all of our windows. Let's go to Actor, click Radii View. Just right click on the gray bar at the top of each window. So we can see the radius of this light. And this is kind of a lie, right? Because while it is telling you the distance that this light will affect, it's not actually showing you the cone of the spotlight. And a spotlight, the cone basically works anywhere from 1 to 90 degrees in either direction from the source direction, which is the arrow. So whatever direction the arrow is pointing, you are able to affect the cone anywhere from 0 degrees all the way to 90 degrees left, right, front, back, wherever. You'll never get any light coming from the back side of that arrow. And to adjust those properties, we're going to right click on our spotlight. And we're going to go into lighting. And right here is the light cone, 128. This is about equivalent to 45 degrees. And that means that from this point to this point down here, this would be 45 degrees. And there isn't going to be any light generated past this point. There isn't going to be any light generated past this point. And unfortunately, there's no visualization to see this, so you just kind of have to eyeball it. Another thing to note is that there is linear fall off from the direction of the spotlight to the outer edges of the cone. That means that the hot spot, the center of the spotlight, is going to be fully bright, and the further you get to the outer edge of the spotlight cone, the darker the light is going to be. So keep that in mind when you're using spotlights to light your space. There isn't really a way to control that hot spot to my knowledge. And if we wanted this to be a fully 90-degree spotlight, which we want because we kind of want to maximize the fall off of that light, we're going to go ahead and set the cone to 100 or to 255. And we're also going to change the brightness and the color of this light so that it more closely represents the sky. So we're going to change this to 128. We're going to give it a bluish color, so probably somewhere around 160 for our hue. And we're going to bring our saturation down so we get some of that blue light. So we're just going to drop it a little bit to like 224. And now we can see some of that blue light here in the scene. We're going to go ahead and duplicate this spotlight and put it in the other skylight. Get it nicely centered on there. And so now I'm going to go ahead and compile everything. And now I'm going to go ahead and test our level. After we've saved, of course. So now we've got our skylights. We've got our room that's being illuminated by our spotlights to cast the fill light from the sky. And everything, I think this, looks a lot better. It looks a lot more naturally lit. Feels more accurate. The only thing left to do is, since we still don't have any lights back here for these spaces, we'll go ahead and increase the ambient value for our level zone info. We'll pop that back up to what we had it before, which I think was 20. Zone light, 20. And if we also want this to feel more representative of that skylight, we can give it the same values as the ambient light. So we set this to 224, and we set the ambient hue to 160. And that's going to give our ambient light just a little bit more of a tint. Now, you might be looking at some of these shadows and thinking, man, these shadows are really blurry. I wish there was a way to fix that. Well, you can. What you can do is any surface that you want to have sharper shadows on, you can right-click on that surface, go to Surface Properties, and in the Pan and Rotate and Scale tab, you can change the Lightmap resolution. Now, this is something that you kind of have to be careful with, because the larger the number you select, the blurrier the texture is going to be. And the smaller it is you set, the sharper it's going to be, but also the shadow map that you generate is going to take up more memory. So it's going to inflate the total size in bytes for your level package. So it's something that you want to be cognizant of when you are increasing light maps on surfaces. And as far as quality goes, right now this by default is 32. So this is what our light map quality at 32 is. If we go all the way to maximum quality and set it to 1 and we recompile, you can see our shadow gets a lot sharper and a lot more defined. Because we're seeing the shadow from the perspective of this light here. So you can see the edge here and the fall off here. That's coming from our little point light that we have in the middle of the room. And we're also seeing the edges of the spotlight from the skylight here affecting the walls. But we're not seeing it on any of the other walls because we haven't really clearly defined the textures. Now, if you want to do the shortcut version of this, you can select a surface and then select all surfaces, or press Shift S. And I'm going to turn real-time preview back on. And if I want all of these to have the same uniform light map settings, I can just set it to 1. Or I'm going to set it to 2 because I think this is a really, actually no, 4. 4 I think is maybe the most balanced compromise between file size and performance versus shadow fidelity. So if we leave it at 4, I'm going to close that, and I'm going to recompile. And now you can see all the shadows are a lot more defined. And you might be wondering why we're getting this really weird banding here. Well, this light right here is coming from the spotlight that we placed up here. It's hitting this edge and it's creating a shadow here. And then this bar of light is coming from our sunlight. So it's lighting up the center of that shadow. And then this shadow over here is being cast from the other skylight from this edge here to this wall. So we are getting sort of a really interesting collision of lights and shadows in this space. And there isn't really an easy solution to that, other than to play around with the values of the ambient brightness or to maybe change the severity of the different lights that are currently in play in the scene. But that is going to cover our lightbox, or our Skybox and our lighting tutorial. And next time we'll probably do a little bit more with lighting in terms of setting up lights for details and doing effects like adding coronas to your lights. We'll cover that in another tutorial. So until then, I will see you in the next video.